What's up, guys? Doomwake here. Welcome to another edition of the Modern Metagame, your weekly recap for the events that took place on Magic Online over the weekend. Before we continue, make sure to go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, and please be sure to let me know in the comment section below what you thought of the video. So the events that we're going to be taking a look at today, as you can see, we have the Saturday Showcase. The Showcase is a culmination of the previous smaller showcases that took place. Basically, with the smaller showcases, if you top 8, you qualify for this larger event. I say larger, it's actually a fairly small event, usually only about 30 players. And the winner of that event, this is the most prestigious event that exists on Magic Online, because the winner of that event gets an invite to the set championship and gets an invite to the Mox Finals, where first place is $20,000. So very, very high stakes event that we're going to be looking at here. And then we have the Saturday challenge, the Sunday challenge, just your standard everyday weekly challenges. And then we have a qualifier on Sunday. This was actually a super qualifier, so that means that first and second place, both get invitations to the next set championship. So with that, let's go ahead and start with the Saturday Showcase. Alright, so starting off with the Saturday Showcase, for the life of me, again, this is one of the most prestigious events on Magic Online, and for some reason, they decide to not post deck lists for this event. I don't know why. They've been doing this for about a year and a half now. As far as I can recall, they've never posted a top 8 deck list for any of the Showcase challenges, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but this is the information this is basically all we have access to. We have the winner of the event, Belcher, Bob49. Again, an absolute master of their craft. They've been playing Belcher for quite some time. Not surprised to see a deck specialist win the event with, kind of what is an under-the-radar deck, especially if you're not prepared for it. I think a lot of the people, because the people who were qualified, like you could find a list of people who were qualified for the event prior, and everybody knew that Bob was going to play Belcher, but how much sideboard spots you're going to dedicate when only one person in the 30-person event is going to be playing Belcher. So, and they're an absolute master, so I'm not surprised to see that. We got 4-color Blink in second place, Jund Saga third, Grixis Shadow fourth, 4-color Blink fifth, Red-White Prowess sixth, 4-color Blink 7th, and then Grixis Darcy 8th. So the one thing I wanted to highlight here, because I do know the deck list, is 6th place Red-White Prowess. I actually worked and, we kind of bounced some ideas off each other with Otterhouse prior to the event, because they were a big fan of the Red-White Obosh deck, and they knew that they wanted to play it, so, we got some good ideas. The deck list that they played is basically the same deck list that I had recorded a video with, the Boros Obosh deck. So there wasn't a ton of changes. I think we only changed like 1 or 2 sideboard cards, but it's just a really powerful deck. I like it's very consistent. It's got good aggressive elements. It's got some good grind potential with Chandra light up the stage Obosh. So I'm a big fan of that deck, and I think that it's definitely a player in the metagame. But just overall, looking at the top 8, we got a bunch of Blink decks, a couple Grixis decks, and then some 1-ofs here. But again, unfortunately, we don't have the deck list. We do have the breakdown. So the takeaway here, 3 4-color Blink, that's our most represented deck. So that is something to consider. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the Saturday Challenge. Alright, so starting off with the Saturday Challenge here, we have first place Black-Green Yawgmoth. This is a deck that has been popping up recently. There's a couple of things that I want to note here, some very interesting choices. So first of all, in the main deck, we have 1 copy of Augur of Autumn, which is a Courser of Crufix-esque card. I will say that Coven is probably pretty easy to achieve in this deck, because you do have a lot of different powers spread out amongst creatures. And the other thing that I wanted to note here that is something that I don't see very often, 1 sideboard Magus of the Moon. Now, when you have 1-ofs like Magus of the Moon in your sideboard, you actually have access to a ton of them, because you're playing Court of Calling and Eldritch Evolution. So you really get some nice utility out of the 1 Magus. The rest of the 75, fairly straightforward, but I just wanted to highlight those sort of differences in our first place Black-Green Yawgmoth deck. Second place, we got some Blue-Red Murktide. The only things worth noting here, there is main deck Blood Moons, The flex spots here, we have 1 Engineered Explosives, 1 Brazen Borrower. We are on 4 Consider. There's a Spell Pierce in the main deck as well, 2 Serum Visions. So outside of the main deck Blood Moons, not a ton of differences here in our Blue-Red Murktide list. And then in the sideboard, most of the stuff is the same. We do have a copy of Fury hanging out here, which is something that I haven't seen these decks play a ton of, but it makes a lot of sense. The card's really powerful, and you know, one of the ways to get around the Murktide deck is to kind of put a bunch of stuff into play early, kind of just go under them, and Fury is a good way to prevent that. So second place, Blue-Red Murktide. Third place, we got some classic burn. Really nothing to note here. 3 Helix, 1 Skullcrack in the main deck. I've seen 4 Helix, I've seen 2 and 2 Split. Those are pretty much the only point of contention within the main deck. Sideboard, they have the Lurrus, which I can't highlight here because Magic Online doesn't like Lurrus that much. 2 Rest in Peace, 3 Deflecting Palm, the remaining Skullcracks in the sideboard, Exquisite Firecraft, which is a card that's pretty good against control, and then rounding out the sideboard with some paths and some smashes. So that's our third place burn list. Fourth place, Is It Murktide? This is no main deck Blood Moons, but we have, it looks like, an Archmage's Charm and an additional copy of Spell Pierce. I believe everything else is probably the same. I think there's one more counterspell in this version as well. And then in the sideboard, Explosive, Stress Down, Force of Negation, 1 of Dispute, 2 Jace, 2. They have the Blood Moons in the sideboard. But yeah, there's really not a ton of differences here. They don't have the Fury. But yeah, fourth place, Blue-Red Murktide. Fifth place, we got some Hammer Time. This looks pretty standard. This particular person decided to play Ingenious Smith over the core outfitters that we saw last week. And 3 Mishra's Bauble, which I'm actually kind of a big fan of. I don't know if I like cutting the Springleaf Drum, but I do like Mishra's Bauble. Just gives you something else to do with Lurrus, and you know, helps smooth out your draws sometimes. 4 Inkmoth Nexus, I've seen 3. Then we have sideboard, Drannith Magistrate, Needle for Urza Saga, 4 copies of Thoughtseize, which makes a lot of sense. Some Hushbringers, Sanctifiers, a Portable Hole, and a Nihil Spellbomb to round out the sideboard, and that's 5th place, Hammer Time. And in 6th place, we got Demonic Tutors, who is a great Magic Online streamer. They are currently battling it out with Aspiring Spike for the trophy race, but they're playing their tried and true Black-Green Yawgmoth. I know they were a big fan of the 1 Blood Artist, 1 Endurance, 1 Geralf's Messenger main deck. A Scavenging Ooze here as well. Rounding out the sideboard, we have the full 4 copies of Endurance in the 75. Crime Punishment, which I believe is 4 Crashing Footfalls, as well as Necromentia, the same. Thoughtseize, just a really clean deck list. Doesn't have the spicy 1-ofs that we saw in our first place deck list, but some different changes here in 6th place, Black-Green Yawgmoth. In 7th place, we got some Grixis Death's Shadow. This is with Dress Downs. I believe this is very close to, if not the same as the Soul Strong list. I noticed there's no gut shots in the sideboard, but 4 Inquisition, 2 Thoughtseize, the full complement, I can't speak today, of Drowns, a Push, a K Command, a Bolt, 4 Heats, 2 Dress Downs in the main deck with a 3rd in the sideboard. Spellbomb, Pierce, Turok, Terminate. So this looks pretty similar to Soulstrong. I don't know exactly what they have over the gut shots, but I remember Soulstrong had a couple of gut shots in their sideboard. But we have 7th place, Grixis Shadow. Rounding out the top 8, we have another Grixis Shadow list. This one actually has some different stuff. We got a Snapcaster in the main deck instead of I think the Lightning Bolt. Yeah, we had a Push, a Command, and a Bolt in the last list. So Snapcaster over a Bolt. And then the sideboard has, looks like, I think the sideboard might be the same, if I recall correctly. So yeah, it looks like just the Snapcaster over the Bolt in the main deck. But yeah, most of these, the Grixis Shadow list are becoming pretty, they're kind of becoming the same. So I think we've established what is considered stock in Grixis Shadow at this point. But that's going to do it for the Saturday challenge. Let's go ahead and hop into the Sunday challenge. Moving into the Sunday challenge, we have first place here, Laplace John. They are a Hammer Time grinder. They play a ton of Hammer Time. And their list is fairly standard. We got Thoughtseize main deck instead of the additional creatures. Sometimes we see the Core Outfitters, sometimes we see the Giver of Runes. They're electing to go with Thoughtseize main deck, 3 Mishra's Baubles, again, the 1 Portable Hole main deck, and the 3 Springleaf Drums that we've seen a couple of times here. And then going into the sideboard, we got 3 Dark Confidants, which is pretty interesting. I think sometimes I've seen 1 or 2, but they're electing to go with 3, which is, you know, a pretty big statement. I think Confidant's one of the better cards against Grixis, and that's why they're doing that. and then Prismatic Ending, Void Mirror, Sanctifier, 1 Duress, rounding out the discard suite. That's kind of cool. But yeah, that's first place, Hammer Time. Second place, we got more Hammer Time. This one's got the 2 Ingenious Smiths, and they actually have one card that I have not seen yet, Bone Splitter. I don't know about, whoops, I did not mean to click on that. I don't know about this Bone Splitter here. I can't say I've seen that one before. They also have a Swiftfoot Boots in the main deck as well. So definitely some interesting one-of targets for the Stoneforge Mystic package. And then we have the full 4 copies of Thoughtseize in the sideboard, along with a bunch of one-of, some of which are Urza Saga targets, and some of which are just good cards to have with Luris, because like the Seal of Cleansing and the Cathar Commando. So that's second place, Hammer Time. Third place, we got some Is It Murktide? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this person also top-aided a challenge last week, and I think they played the same deck list. I don't even think anything has changed here, but we do have 2 main deck Blood Moons. We have a sideboard of only 1 Jace, so I've seen a lot of lists have 2 Jace, so they've decided to cut one of those. 3 explosives instead of the 1 explosives that you usually find in the main deck, so I think 3 in the 75 is pretty stock. Some different sideboard cards here, Archmage's Charm, Force of Negation, Torpor Orb, couple relics, so a couple interesting things in the flex spots, but for the most part, the rest of the core is remained intact, so that's third place, Blue-Red Murktide. Fourth place, we got 4-color Yorion. Every time there's a Yorion deck on the screen, I have to, like, expand it to make sure that you can see the entire deck list. It's a lot, but we have 1 Teferi Hero of Dominaria, 4 Raveler, 4 Ren, and 6, a lot of, we've seen that before. Only 2 Witness, 2 Fury, some interesting numbers. I have heard some arguments about Fury not being quite as good in the format anymore because everybody knows about it, people are playing around it, so it does kind of make sense for me to cut a couple of Furies from the deck. And we got the 1 Time Warp, 2 Counterspell, a main deck Veto, which is interesting, 1 Force Negation, 1 Bolt, only 2 Ephemerate as well, which also makes sense if you're trimming on Fury, so I definitely understand those changes. We got an Emrakul on the sideboard, Helix, Veil of Summer, and the rest of this looks pretty straightforward, so that's 4th place. 4-color Yorion. 5th place, we're running it back. This is a lot of the same numbers that we just saw. There's an extra Witness. I know that the previous list had 2 Fury, 2 Witness. The Planeswalker numbers are the same. There's also a main deck Yorion, which is interesting. They've also cut some of the flex spots. Remember in the last list there was 1 Lightning Bolt, and this list is also playing with 4 Ephemerate, even though they've cut down to 2 Fury. But it makes sense because they've added a Witness and a Yorion to the main deck, so I definitely understand those changes. 2 Helix, 2 Unholy Heats in the sideboard, that's kind of cool. Force of Vigor, Veil of Summer, Veto, and yeah, so some interesting, slight adjustments made to the main deck, but that's 5th place, 4-color Yorion. 6th place, we have Murktide, but a little bit of a different flavor of Murktide here. We have Jeskai, and we're splashing for Teferi, Time Raveler, along with Prismatic Ending, and then some additional sideboard choices. So I've talked to a couple of people about Murktide, and a lot of the people that I've spoken to have preferred the blue-red version, just because the mana is a little bit cleaner, and you don't necessarily need Prismatic Ending. So I don't have enough experience with the Murktide deck to know whether you want to be on Izzet or Jeskai, but that's kind of that's just the information that I'm gathering from some of the Murktide players. But I definitely can understand why you would want to splash for Ending and Teferi. They're both very powerful cards. And then a lot of stuff that we have seen previously, Dress Downs. Again, the other sideboard card is Wear Tear, and more copies of Teferi in the sideboard. The other notable thing about splashing white is you get access to a 3rd color on Engineered Explosives, which could be really important in some spots as well. So that's 6th place, Jeskai Murktide. In 7th place, we got a repeat performance from Demonic Tutors. I would recommend, if you're not already following them on Twitch, I'd recommend go checking out Demonic Tutors on Twitch. They are very good, especially with the Yawgmoth deck. It's a deck that they've become an absolute master with, and as you can see, back-to-back top 8s. I think the list is the exact same from yesterday. I don't believe that he made any changes, so we're not gonna not much to talk about here. But just I will say that Demonic Tutors is an excellent player, and they are very good at playing the Yawgmoth deck, so that's what we have in 7th place. Rounding out our top 8 here, we have some Grixis Death Shadow. A couple of different changes here. We have a Dreadbore instead of, I believe, is normally a Terminate, I think is normally in that spot. and the rest of the stuff looks fairly similar. One push, one bolt. I've seen a couple, or one push, one Kolaghan's command. No bolts in this list. I've seen a couple people play with bolt. I've seen some people play without. That seems to be a bit of a heated, or a point of contention. It's something that's up for debate. And then we have another interesting one in the sideboard here. We got a Bitter Blossom, a card that I haven't seen in quite some time. But if everybody is playing Grixis, Bitter Blossom does seem like one of the better cards in the mirror match. So that's definitely something worth considering as we round out our top 8 here with Grixis Death Shadow. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the Sunday Super Qualifier. Alright, so moving into the Sunday Super Qualifier, we have first place Teamer Footfalls. It's kind of a blast from the past, if you will. So this particular version is playing Bone Crusher Giant main deck over Blood Moon, which is something that I personally haven't played Bone Crusher Giant in quite some time. Not sure about how good it is against the Dragon's Rage Channeler, because Channeler becomes a 3/3 so fast, and the Death Shadows of the world, so something that you could definitely try and might be worth considering. We also have a main deck Subtlety, which is something I haven't tried before, but definitely good against, if you're expecting a lot of Amulet and Tron, and then we have the Blood Moons in the sideboard, along with an additional copy of Subtlety. So first place, Teamer Footfalls. Second place, we got some Hammer Time. This is very similar to the Laplace John approach from the Sunday Challenge that we just looked at, with, the 20 creatures, no additional givers, and stuff like that. We do have 3 portable holes instead of the additional Thoughtseizes, so that's the one difference here. And then in the sideboard, we have 1 less Confidant to make room for more Thoughtseizes, Prismatic Ending, Void Mirror, Duress. So a lot of the same stuff. I think this might be like 4 or 5 cards off of Laplace John's list. So second place, Hammer Time. Third place, we got some Grixis Shadow. This looks like Soul Strong's almost exact list. It's definitely the same main deck. The sideboard, 2 Dress Down, there's the Gut Shot, Alpine Moon. I think this might be almost the exact same as Soul Strong's list, but yeah, third place, Grixis Shadow. Fourth place, we got some more Grixis Shadow, same main deck, and slightly different sideboard, 1 Dress Down, 2 Nihil Spellbomb, 2 Terminate, but yeah, main deck is the exact same as the list we just looked at, so that's fourth place, Grixis Shadow. In fifth place, we got some Hammer Time. Now, this one is a little bit different than the other Hammer Time list because we're going back to the Ancient Stirrings, that if you watched last week's episode, that there was a list from one of the top 8s that had Ancient Stirrings. We got a main deck Relic, a Shadow Spear, a Cranial Plating. But yeah, this is essentially Hammer with green for Stirring. See if there's any green cards in the sideboard. There is Veil of Summer and Gaia's Blessing as well. So slightly different take on Hammer. Stirrings is nice because it kind of finds you Urza Saga, which the other card doesn't. The other card being the card that I can't think of right now, Ingenious Smith. Ingenious Smith can't find Saga, so that's why Stirrings is a little bit, you see it replacing that. So that's fifth place, Green-White Hammer. Sixth place, we got some Is It Murktide. This is the person who top 8 of the Sunday Challenge. We see a repeat performance here in the Sunday PTQ. I think this is the exact same list. I know that the 2 Blood Moons main deck, and yeah, there was some weird 1-ups in the sideboard. So same exact 75 from the Sunday Challenge, top 8, Blue-Red Murktide. Alright, we finally got some spice here in 7th place. We have Bring to Light Scapeshift. So Bring to Light is a sorcery that lets you play a creature, instant, or sorcery with however many colors of mana you spent to play Bring to Light. So basically this deck is looking to play Scapeshift along with Dryad and a bunch of ramp spells. It's also an Omnath deck. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting deck list to see here in the top 8. Very popular deck a few months back, but kind of fallen out of favor. Maybe it's back in the menu, so that's what we have here in 7th place. Also, Bring to Light is really cool because it allows you to play all these sweet 1-ofs in the sideboard that you would normally not have access to, or you'd have to play a bunch of copies of, and you effectively have 5 copies of all of them with Bring to Light. So 7th place, Bring to Light Scapeshift. In 8th place, we got, rounding out the top 8, we got some 4-color Yorion. This is 3 Fury, 4 Eternal Witness, so that's a bit of a different swap. Only 2 Ice Fangs, 4 Ephemerates, 2 Eladamri's Call, which is definitely an interesting one here. Can go and find the Witness to set up the Witness loops with Ephemerate, so that's kind of cool. 1 Lightning Bolt, 2 Force of Negation, a Counterspell in the main deck, and then moving on to the sideboard, a bunch of 1-ofs, some Force of Vigors, a couple relics here. The cool thing about Eladamri's Call is you get to play some 1-ofs in the sideboard that you wouldn't normally have access to with, now that you essentially get to have 3 copies of them post-board. Not just the Emrakul, but also Endurance, Knight of Autumn, and Meddling Mage here as well. So, that is going to do it for all of the top 8s. Now that we've kind of looked at all of them individually, let's put them all on the screen and see what the metagame really looks like. All right, so this is kind of all of the events on the screen at the same time. On the left-hand side, you have on top the Saturday Challenge followed by the Saturday Showcase, and then on the right-hand side, you have the Sunday Challenge followed by the Sunday PTQ. So one thing you'll notice, there's a ton of companions. There was 4 on the Saturday Challenge, 6 in the Showcase, 5 in the Sunday Challenge, and then 5 in the Sunday PTQ. So tons of companions, not surprising. Companions are great. The metagame is kind of shaping itself to, there's a lot of Shadow, there's a lot of Murktide, there's a lot of Hammer, and there's a lot of 4-color Yorion. Those are definitely the 4 decks to beat. But if you look scattered across the top 8s, there was one top 8 that had 2 Yawgmoth decks, another top 8 that had a Yawgmoth deck. We saw Belcher win the Showcase and Temur Footfalls win the PTQ. So those were arguably the 2 more prestigious events that were both won by kind of decks that were outside of the box or not expected. Yawgmoth even won the Saturday Challenge. So even though the metagame has a ton of those 4 decks, there are still other decks that are doing well and winning. And there's also variations. You have the Jeskai Murktide, and there's other Grixis decks. I think the Grixis Darcy deck from Twinless Twin in the Showcase was the non-shadow variation as well. And then we have the Bring to Light Scapeshift deck. So there's some different stuff going on here. Even though there's a lot of companions in a lot of those 4 decks, you can still play some other decks and do pretty well in the format. So if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know in the comment section below what you thought. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see everybody in the next episode of the Modern Metagame.